patterns of thinking, our old patterns of services, of get buying services. Who is a real disruptor? I'm very proud and very honored that Travis Kalanick is coming to DLD to give his vision of the next Uber, of Uber and the next world, the next changes. Please, Travis, come on stage.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a drink of water before we get started. All right, well, it's very good to be here in Germany. And it's my first time here at DLD. What I wanted to do is first take you through a little bit about who we are and a little bit about how we look at 2015 and how we look at 2015 in Europe. So first, Uber started very much as an unambitious, simple idea. Actually, my co-founder and I were in Paris, and we wanted to get a taxi ride. And I think a lot of folks know it can be pretty difficult to get a taxi ride in Paris. And so we were at a cafe late at night, and we just said, you know what, we just wanted to push a button and get a ride. It was really that simple. And we went back to San Francisco, a place where it's very difficult to get a taxi as well, maybe a sister city in that regard. And we started up essentially a side project, which we called Uber. And it started out, it was for me, my co-founder, and 100 of our friends. It wasn't meant to be like a big business. It was just a way for us to get around the city. And for us, it meant no more driving, no more looking for parking in a city that didn't have a lot. It meant that when we were in a car, we could work or talk to friends and family. We had the credit card on file, and so I didn't have to get the wallet out when I left the car. I just walk out. There's no cash. And you'd get to your destination, walk out of the car, and of course you rate the driver on a 5-star basis, which allows us to make sure that there's a service level that's being delivered and sort of accountability for the driver side of the equation. And so what happened was it started out for 100 of our friends, and we would be at restaurants, and then there'd be new friends. They'd say, hey, can I do this too? And we're like, well, this is kind of just a private thing. It just turned out that everybody in our city wanted it. And so we opened it up. And what happened was I would get a car, I'd get out, and of course somebody else would request somewhere else in the city, and then they would get picked up by that same car. In fact, you'd have one car essentially being shared across dozens of people in a single day. And so more riders ultimately meant more cars. And more cars meant lower pickup times. And of course, when you have low pickup times, then that means that drivers are wasting less time going to pick people up, which means they can do more trips per hour. More trips per hour then means the drivers can make more money. It also means you can get prices down. And so it started this virtuous cycle where we are constantly looking for more efficiencies in the system, and with those efficiencies, finding ways to allow drivers to make a higher income and also bring the prices down of this core service. And so we would do all kinds of things for efficiency. We predict where demand was going to be, and we'd give cues to the drivers, essentially heat maps, for how to go where demand is going to be in the next 15 minutes. Those, again, leading to more trips per hour, and this virtuous cycle just kind of keeps spinning. And with recent innovations, something some of you may have heard of, we have in San Francisco, we also have in Paris and New York. It's a service called Uber Pool, which means you push a button and an Uber comes just like it did before. But when you open the door to get in, there's somebody else in the car already. We have so many users in certain cities, so many riders, that 2 people are literally taking the same trip at the same time. And in a previous world, that's 2 cars with 2 separate people in them taking up twice as much space when you could actually take up half as much. And so we have these really interesting visions for, well, when that gets really efficient, of course, what's happening is you're taking cars off the road. You're certainly taking cars out of parking lots. and you're making a huge difference in the city. We have this thing we call the perpetual ride, where a driver picks up one customer, then picks up another, drops one of them off, then picks up another. And what happens is that driver always has a customer in the car. It's sort of like almost like a private bus type service, but on demand and hyper convenient, picking you up exactly where you are and taking you directly to where you want to go. If you can get 10 people trips on this perpetual ride, this Uber Pool ride, and the driver needs to make 25 euro an hour, you're now looking at a situation where each person trip costs €2.50. And that's sort of the vision of where Uber wants to go, is to get such huge efficiencies that the price of getting around goes far below the cost of owning a car. So Uber is known for its reliability. Sometimes it's even known for being expensive or high-end. We certainly have high-end options, but of course we have low-end options. And the way we look at what we do is we are the cheapest reliable ride always. And the key there is reliable, because you can always have a cheap ride. You can sell a ride for half as much. But if you can't get one, it doesn't really matter. And so our philosophy is to always have an available ride to somebody who wants it. Our mission, we like to say, is transportation as reliable as running water, everywhere for everyone. So where does that vision or that mission go? It means that our customers anywhere in a city have a ride that's within 5 minutes, but it means any city in the world. Today, almost 270 of them. And it becomes ultimately that cost-effective replacement for owning a car. Now, why does this sort of accidental breakthrough from something was just a side project, why does it matter? It matters because in today's world, well, around the world, there are over 1 billion cars out there. 1 billion cars that are 96% unutilized, right? Meaning maybe you are in your car for an hour a day, the other 23 hours it's sitting there doing nothing. Which means, of course, we have this huge infrastructure for storing this highly unutilized asset. Those 1 billion cars, by the way, is $20 trillion of an asset distributed around the world. 350 million in Europe and 50 million here in Germany. We use 15% of our city's space to store these vehicles. We have buildings specifically designed for the storage of this unutilized asset. And of course, like I described earlier, without an Uber Pool type mechanism, these assets are poorly organized and poorly allocated. They're not shared, they're inefficiently routed, and of course, 2% of your life is spent sitting in one of these metal boxes, sitting in traffic. And so, of course, that inefficiency also leads to a massive carbon footprint that we all are going to have to live with, of course, our children and grandchildren as well. And then there's things, simple things, but things that matter, like drinking and driving being a major problem in world cities. When everybody owns a car and they feel like they have to drive everywhere because that's how it is, that's how many cities in the world work, then people drink and they drive and accidents happen, and it's not necessary. And so this car replacement story that I alluded to earlier, it's not just a vision or a dream, it's something that's actually taking place today. And it's amazing to see it sort of coming to, being realized. In San Francisco, we launched the whole company 4.5 years ago, June 2010. So 4.5 years old. We have 1.6 million people who've ever ridden an Uber in San Francisco. The equivalent, remember, we have people who are driving on the Uber platform full time. We have people who are driving on the Uber platform for 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week. The equivalent full-time jobs that we've created in San Francisco is 7,500. In New York City, we've been there 3.5 years. We've seen 1.9 million riders. And the equivalent full-time jobs that we've created in 3.5 years is 13,000.